This is section 10.2, day 2 notes. We are now going to simplify fractional problems with radicals. So we start with this large square root of 36 over 49. I'm actually going to start out by rewriting this with individual square roots for top and bottom. So I'll have the square root of 36 over the square root of 49. You are not allowed to have a square root on the bottom. So what I'm going to do here is actually perform a little trick. On the bottom, I have the square root of 49. So to get rid of that, he needs a partner so he can come outside of the square root. So I'm going to multiply him by another 49. But what I do to the bottom of the fraction, I also have to do to the top of the fraction. So on the bottom, I now have a pair of 49s. So I can actually write 49 without a radical sign. But on the top, I still have to multiply these two numbers. So 36 times 49 is 1,764. I can actually take the square root of that 1,764 and I get 42. So now I have 42 over 49. Whoops. I can simplify this by dividing each part by 7. And that'll get me 6 over 7, which is my simplified fraction. For letter B, they already broke up the two parts into individual square roots. So I have the square root of 5 over the square root of 2. Again, I cannot have a square root on the bottom, so I'm going to use that same trick and multiply the bottom by a square root of 2. That gets me two 2's on the bottom, which means I can rewrite it without the square root. But again, what I do to the bottom part, I have to do to the top part. So now I just multiply 5 times 2, which gives me 10. Now because these are not identical, one's a 5, one's a 2, they are not a pair, so they have to stay in a radical sign. So this answer is actually going to be the square root of 10 over 2. The next problem looks a little bit harder, but it's pretty easy. I'm going to again start by rewriting this problem into separate square roots. So the square root of 18y over the square root of 36y to the third. Next up, I'm going to actually try and simplify these numbers first. Is there a number that goes into 18 and 36? If so, what's the highest number that goes into both of those? The highest number that goes into both of those is actually an 18. So I'm going to divide each top and bottom by 18. Then if I look at the y's, I can take a y out of both of these. So I'm going to take a y also with the 18. So when I simplify then, 18 divided by 18 is 1. If I start with one y here and I take out a y, I'm left with no y's on the top. On the bottom, 36 divided by 18 will give me a 2. Y to the third divided by y will be y to the second. Now notice how these both kept their radical signs. That's because these were identical, or they weren't identical. Okay. So next, I have to get this radical sign off the bottom. So my same old trick, going to multiply by 2y to the second on the top and the bottom. On the bottom, that'll just get rid of the radical sign. So I'll still have 2y to the second, but without the radical. On the top, because they aren't matching, I have to keep the radical, and 1 times 2y to the second will just be 2y to the second. So that's my final answer. Square root of 2y to the second on top over 2y to the second on the bottom. Letter D. These two parts are already broken up, but just like before in letter C, I need to simplify the numbers. So I need to look, what goes into 25 and 5? The largest number possible is going to be 5. So I'm going to divide both top and bottom by 5. And then b and b to the third, I can take out a b. So on the top part, I'll have 25b divided by 5b. Well, 25 divided by 5 is 5. B, if I take out a b, gives me no b's on the top. Then on the bottom, 5 divided by 5 is 1, but b to the third, if I take out 1, will end up being b to the second. Again, I have a square root on the bottom, so I'm going to have to multiply by 1b to the second on the top and the bottom. All that does on the bottom is get rid of the radical sign, so it still leaves me with 1b to the second. On the top, I have to multiply. 5 times 1 is 5, and I'm just still left with b to the second. And this has to stay in the radical. So the top has the radical part, 5b to the second. The bottom just has 1b to the second. Letter E, the square root of 3 over the square root of 30m to the second. I am going to see what goes into 3 and 30. The highest number is 3, so I'm going to divide top and bottom by 3. The bottom part has an m to the second, but the top part has no m's, which means I cannot take out any. So I'm just dividing by 3 on this one. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. 30 divided by 3 is 10, and because I didn't take out any m's, it stays m to the second. Then I can multiply the top and the bottom by the 10m to the second. On the bottom, that just gets rid of the radical sign, so I still have 10m to the second. On the top, I have 1 times 10m to the second. They are not the same, so I have to put them in a radical. 1 times 10 is 10, and m to the second tags along.